Reverend K.R.J. Misher.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Mr. President, for your reply. The ACDP believes that godly values such as love, respect, and care for others that our grandparents instilled in us helped to build a solid foundation for our children and grandchildren. These are some of the values that have kept African families and cultures intact. The Pact for the Future is controversial in that it lays the foundation for the UN's new global order that will see the transfer of power from sovereign nations to the UN. While some may consider the Pact for the Future a progressive step towards global cooperation, it presents certain dangers and disadvantages that will need careful consideration. Of significant risk is the potential erosion of our national sovereignty. Noting all the positives you have stated, Mr. President, my question is whether you can assure this House and all concerned South Africans that you will not support or allow the sovereignty of South Africa to be eroded when the UN's Pact for the Future is implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. When we participated in the various discussions that have been taking place through a number of formations, both on our own continent and in various other organizations in the world, we were, as a country, always aware that we've got to promote our own national interests, interests that are clearly encapsulated in our Constitution, and interests that are also clearly well articulated in our Charter at the AU level. And in doing so, we joined many other countries in the world. And Honorable Reverend Misher will have listened carefully, I hope, when I described the process that has led to the adoption of this pact, because it was thoroughly debated over a number of years, involving at the very last moment more than 7,000 individuals and many countries that finally adopted this charter. And I would never believe that any of the countries that participated would have wanted in the end to erode their own sovereignty. They would instead have wanted to strengthen the United Nations, because through the United Nations we are stronger. Through the United Nations we are able to strengthen our own sovereignty. I've never seen the United Nations eroding a country's sovereignty, as the United Nations, through the charter that was adopted, aims to promote all what I would say is good that every country would want to see promoted. So we participated with a great deal of confidence, knowing that in the debates, in the exchanges, we are not undermining what we stand for and what our Constitution sets out. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, President. Honorable Masina.
The Pact for the Future articulates a number of aspirations as observed by the UN.
Please be closer to the mic. Order, honorable members. Allow the member to express himself. Honorable Masina, bring the mic closer to you.
The Pact for the Future articulates a number of aspirations as observed by the UN Secretary General. President, can you kindly share with South Africa what did South Africa posit on the following aspect? Firstly, on the need for the reform of the international financial architecture so that it can better serve developing countries, as well as on the reviewing of the sovereign debt architecture to ensure that developing countries can borrow sustainably to invest in the future of their country. I thank you, President.
Mr. President.
Honorable Speaker, Yes, we made our positions very clear when it comes to not only the reform of the United Nations Security Council, but also the reform of the financial institutions, the financial architecture, the various international organizations such as the IMF, the World Bank, and a number of others that operate at a global level. We argued and continue to argue that Africa needs to be well represented in such institutions that take decisions that are of global impact. And we have been clear about what we've been putting forward. And Honorable Member Masina might recall that during COVID, the issue of the representation of our continent on these institutions, as well as the issue of the sovereign debt, came up very strongly. We were then the chair of the AU, and we led the process of arguing for debt forgiveness for those countries, particularly in the global south, that are in deep debt, debt stall or debt stoppage of paying interest, that should happen, and that there should also be debt cancellation and debt restructuring. So we led that process and even touched on important issues which are dealt with at the IMF and the World Bank, on issues like the SRDs, which have been made available in large measure to your more developed economy countries, and that those should also be made available to the African continent or the global south. We did successfully get that process to succeed to some extent, but feel that it has not succeeded enough. So, Honorable Masina, we continue to argue for debt forgiveness. We argue for debt cancellation because a number of countries on our continent are heavily laden with debt, and many of them are having to spend quite a lot of their own resources on security matters, on disasters that befall their own countries due to climate change. And we argue that the world financial institutions should come to the aid and assistance of such countries. But more particularly, we want to be at the table where all these matters are discussed. So we continue to advocate for fairness, for equality, and as you will have heard in the theme for our chairpersonship or presidency of the G20, we are front-loading the issue of solidarity, that there does need to be solidarity, and the solidarity that we talk about must be all-encompassing. It must also involve issues such as sovereign debt treatment, equality, which is part of our theme, must lead to equality of treatment. We must also, as the African continent, be represented in all those organizations in the global financial architecture that take decisions that affect many nations. So our campaign is not going to stall. In fact, it is going to gain momentum as we now get in November to be given the seat to be president of the G20. And we have the support of many countries on our continent and in the global south to continue arguing for these positions. So we will not tire. We will continue to articulate these positions. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Honorable Malema.
Thank you very much, Comrade President. Firstly, I want to thank you for according Comrade Tito official funeral, because when it comes to us that side, we always struggle. I still struggle with the fact that Peter Mugabe was never accorded a state funeral. And I'm happy that you gave it to Comrade Tito, well-deserving a Category 2 state funeral. President, we must appreciate the role that you have played when it comes to International Court of Justice and the fact that South Africa mobilized the international community in support of the Palestinian question. We appreciate that the Pact for the Future has got progressive resolutions in relation to Palestine. And this parliament, in line with Pact of the Future, took a resolution that we must close the Israeli embassy and cut all diplomatic ties with Israel. Till to date, you are so reluctant to implement that decision. And the one behind you, in the name of the Speaker, can also explain as to why is that resolution of Parliament, which was taken by the majority of our people here in Parliament, that we must cut the diplomatic ties with Israel and close the embassy of Israel, because we cannot share territory with murderers, with rapists and people who kidnap women and kill children and want to erode the Palestinian nation. So I'm asking, Mr. President, as to what is your reluctance, because that resolution was taken when you were the President of South Africa, committed to the people of Palestine. You must take practical action like Brazil did. Brazil said the ambassador of Brazil must be withdrawn completely from Israel.
Your time is up.
Why are you scared to withdraw our embassy and close the Israeli embassy in South Africa?
Thank you. Up. Mr. President.
Honorable Masina, you don't have to read for that.
Order, Honorable Malema. You can take those matters outside. They are not for the House. Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Malema, no tla gabotse o bolela dintho tse botse se re di dirang yaanong o nagana gore we are reluctant and cowardish and all that. That is not so. The executive has noted, fully noted, what the National Assembly took a resolution on. And we have said, as we have been asked, that this matter is being considered, and we're also considering the various broad issues around it. Our support for the cause of the Palestinians is irrevocable, and we have articulated that here from time to time. And the various other aspects of putting pressure on Israel to do what is right by and for the Palestinians are matters that are being considered, and a number of proposals have been put forward. So be rest assured, Honorable Malema, that these are matters that the executive is considering. Now, of course, being who you are, impatient, you want everything to be done yesterday. I know that, but it is a matter that is being considered in a very active manner, and in due course we will be able to articulate precisely what the executive's response is to the resolution that was taken by the National Assembly. Thank you, Honorable Malema.
Thank you very much, Honorable President.